Welcome to episode 20 of Control. Today is all about the Central Research's Central Atrium. This is a massive room, about 200 feet high. It is one of the largest rooms in the game, and it is definitely one of the prettiest. There is a ton to talk about here. This is Control's equivalent of an outdoor area, and there are so many little touches here that it's going to take more than one episode to get through them all. So we better get started soon. I went ahead and killed about 100 guys. We're probably going to see another 40 or 50, but let's not let the combat interrupt us too much. The first thing I want to mention is that this is a research division, and because of that, you can't just think of it as a generic atrium. It's not just a place for generic people to go up and down. No. This is about the research division, and you know what that means? It means eggheads, it means theoretical science, it means misapplication and awkwardness. And that's what this room is all about, and I think it serves just great. Here you can see a part of what I'm talking about. There are a large number of abstract figures, abstract art pieces, both in cases and on the walls. But everything is gray. We got a lot of gray wood, a lot of gray concrete, gray tile, gray marble. I think that's a really great way to do it. If you want to say, this is a research division for eggheads, it's all gray and abstract art. But the player's eyes are going to bleed. And, some players will burp straight into the mic. So you're going to need to do a little bit more than that. And what they've done is they've put in plenty of greenery. Not only do they have these green potted plants everywhere and these huge, beautiful trees like down in the cafeteria, they also have these green wall tiles and these green hanging vines. All of these things combine to break up the gray a little bit to make it so that you don't feel overwhelmed by gray. And I think it works great. That's just an opinion. I'm sure that there are some people who hate this room, but let's talk about it a little bit more. Because this is so tall, you have to wonder exactly what the navigation is about. Some people create atriums and they put in staircases that are off in side rooms, and the atrium is just about the view. Some people put in atriums and have escalators or a central elevator that goes up. These folks put in nothing but stairs. There's nothing in this atrium but stairs, and they're really awful stairs in terms of usability. Like, who wants to go from up here to down there, or even further down, on these windy stairs? It's like the least efficient way to move. But it looks great, and it floats in the air, so obviously that represents the research division perfectly. Obviously they're going to use the least convenient, but most interesting and most pretty approach. Here we can see some more modern art and some more gray. Oh, more enemies. Where? Hello. Alright, there's the thunk, so I guess that's all we needed. When it comes to the walls, they use every possible kind of gray wall they can find, and gray ceiling too. So it's worth noting that while this place is as gray as possible, not all of the side rooms are. They couldn't afford to keep hammering in the gray. People would start to go cross-eyed, So they're pretty careful about it, but there are a number of tiles in here that are particularly interesting. I really like these circles. We don't see them very much because they're not very versatile. They're very specific, and if you overused them, it would be super obvious. But I just really like the way that they cut a shape that is not a rectangle into the wall. Almost all of the other shapes are rectangles, and we don't see very many circles. That's because circles are surprisingly hard to integrate into your modular elements. Still, it's really good to see a few of them, and I think it was a good choice. I also want to mention this vertical element. They've got a couple of things going on here. Obviously, the vertical ceilings are a big concern in something like this. How do you make them feel fresh? How do you make them feel good? Well, they do the same thing they do everywhere, and they have a central cube, a central rectangle that is a brilliant skylight. But since that central rectangle is so large, they've put in a couple of drops with a couple of darker tiles to make sure that it feels a little bit less like you're looking into death itself when you stare at the sun. Off to the sides, there's obviously going to be a variety of staggered roofs due to each floor having its own ceiling. But we have this really neat trick where they use these modern art indents. What do these remind you of? Well, they remind you of windows. These look like floors. They look like they are really, really far away windows for really, really far away floors. Obviously, that doesn't hold up if you stare at them, but it's not supposed to. They're supposed to look like that at first impression, and then when you look, you see their modern art. The result here is that this doesn't feel like it's, 10 stories above us. It feels like it's 30 stories above us. It feels much further away, because you think you're seeing more floors than there actually are. I think that's a great way to do it, and obviously it's mostly stuck to only the topmost slice. It's not really on any of the lower walls like down here, because that's not what it's about. It's about making the top of the room appear further away and larger. As I say, most of this stuff is about making smallish things look big, and that's mostly trickery. Navigation is also a concern here, and I don't just mean how the fictional characters in the game world navigate, I mean the player. There are a couple of floors that are reachable by the player, such as this top floor all the way down to the bottom, but there are a lot of floors that aren't reachable by the player from this room. For example, we have an office over there, we got some decks over there, we got some enemies. Now, I already cleared this area out, but because they thought I was bored, they sent me some more enemies. Aren't they nice? Are you enjoying yourself? Right. Back to it. So, there are a couple of floors that we can't really reach, like over here and up there. So those are places that we can only reach through navigation via other means, but then they bring us right back into this beautiful atrium. I think that's a good way to centralize the experience of this particular zone without having to centralize the navigation. And that's honestly what most atriums are about. It's a way for you to look out into a larger space that joins up the entire building in a shared visual, even if you can't actually navigate. Like there's no stair going down or whatever. Because the idea is you'll probably use elevators or whatever, so you don't need it all to be linked up perfectly. You need it all to look like it's linked up. And that's the same theory we got going on here with these beautiful designed stairs going to about half of the places that we want to actually go. Down here you can see another classic. If you are trying to say that there is a different kind of zone up ahead, you simply plant random evidence of it. In this case, you can see we've got this glowy mold. Well, that's because the zone down here is the mold zone. I am not a fan of the mold side quest, but we will have to talk about it because I am a fan of the levels. And you know me, levels. But not right now. We'll talk about that later. I am enjoying a lot of the side areas that don't normally get a ton of love in these sorts of rooms. They have a lot of presence in this room, just because they can dedicate so much vertical space. When's the last time you saw a 25-foot ceiling in a cafeteria? Because they have so much vertical space and they're not too concerned about cramming every single possible level in, they can cram in a lot of visual focus on the rooms they want you to see. This is one of the things I always get wrong when I'm doing an atrium. I always say, oh, it's 4 floors, meaning that it's like floor, 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 floor. No. You can have floors that don't sync up, and it works fine. Don't You don't have to press everything in as tight as you can. I do wish these shelters were a little bit more populated. It doesn't really feel like anybody ever went into them. Oh well. This is once again back to the mold area. Down here we can enter into a room, but I'll just show it to you. I don't actually know. There's something here, but I don't know what it is. You can see that it's a soundproofing room, and there's a button, and you can click the button. Ooh, which I believe gives you media that you're supposed to, research and do stuff with. I haven't bothered. It's one of those things where if you hear it, it's supposed to make you something or other. But since it's small and it's off to the side, I thought I'd show it to you while we were exploring the larger room instead of, stumbling across it at random while I'm doing something else. It didn't feel right to separate it like that. The last thing we're going to do before we stop with the overview is we're going to go grab one of the elements at the top because I missed a bit of loot and I think we want it. Loot! Hooray! So that means running up some stairs for a while. Doot 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 doot. I don't know why I decided I wanted to grab this on camera. I just wanted to show you that both of the shelters were empty. Neither of them has anything interesting in it, which is a little bit of a shame. It's suitable. This is the research department, right? So you don't expect to find much signs of life, I guess. But it would have been interesting if there had been something in those other than just a cast-off element. It would have allowed them... It's a chance for them to add context to this larger room that they never did. For example, imagine if that shelter had been full of signs of people who are like, yeah, we got stuck in the cafeteria and we didn't know where else to go. There's no way from the cafeteria to somewhere safe. It would have been interesting, right? Anyway, for the next episode, we are going to go into this area, which is technically forward. There's a lot of cool level design stuff to talk about in there, so we'll get to it when we get to it. But it's worth just mentioning that there is plenty of abstract art for us to marvel at in this area, just in case you're wondering. So when you're building your levels, don't forget that the decorations in the level are part of the level, and so they should represent whatever the level's about. And in this case, it makes perfect sense. See you in episode 21, where we shoot some stuff.